Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast. Along with the Nuggets claiming a series win over the Lakers last night, we had multiple other NBA games take place that we have to get into here. Next up, we have the Boston Celtics, who defeated the Heat to go up 3-1 in the series, but Kristaps Porzingis was hurt in the process, which ultimately becomes just about the biggest story of this game. But before we get into that on this game, and just remember for our live viewers, use the comment section to give us your thoughts. We'll try and address as many comments as possible. But this was a little bit of a weird game where the Celtics led from the jump all the way through the end of the game, but it didn't feel like maybe their most dominant performance. They weren't super convincing. Both Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown really weren't great in this game. They combined for 37 points on 12 of 32 from the field. Just feels like Tatum sometimes refuses to work himself inside and get some actual good looks. It takes a certain level of desperation, it feels like almost, from the Celtics offense, where then Tatum actually tries to be an interior presence, but until then he just relies on perimeter shooting, on difficult shots, and he's, good enough at making some of these shots that ultimately his numbers aren't terrible, but he could be sort of garnering that level of excitement that the national media has for Anthony Edwards right now if Tatum, again, just seemed like he had that a little bit more of that killer instinct. Now, if you're talking who's the better player, Tatum, Edwards right now, I don't really want to get into that debate, but I think I would have a hard time going with Edwards over Tatum, but again, that's not the point of this segment here. But he was sort of settling for all of these difficult shots. You had Jaylen Brown, who was struggling at the rim. He was turning the ball over. He did so 6 times. But the reason why the Celtics were able to jump out to this massive lead was because of the fact that Derrick White had a career game, showed up for them big time, scored 38 points, 15 of 26 from the field, 8 of 15 from 3, both career highs in points and shot attempts. And from the jump, it was clear that he had this going for him. Scored 16 points in the first quarter. He was hitting these fall-away threes. It was a ridiculous performance from him. He also still is so impactful on that defensive him and Drew Holiday both, specifically in transition. They just give you that two-way effort that is on a different level. And for Miami, they are clearly just very hindered by all of these injuries that they are dealing with, and as a result, they don't have the offensive firepower to keep up with the Celtics, and their offense was among one of the bottom units anyways during the regular season. They were in that bottom 10, that bottom third of the league. They were 21st in offensive rating. Plus, you take out Terry Rozier, you take out Jimmy Butler, even Josh Richardson. It's just not necessarily the personnel that can get it done in a moment like this, trying to face odds like they have against the Boston Celtics, who were a wagon during the regular season at least. And, they were getting some good looks last night too, but they just couldn't hit, which sort of further proved that the shooting from Game 2, which they stole from the Celtics, was a little bit of an anomaly. But like I alluded to, the story of this game was Kristaps Porzingis going down with an injury in the second quarter. He was dribbling around the perimeter, took a couple hard steps, and ended up pulling up staggering. Looked like it was his right calf specifically that was bothering him. He ended up leaving the game, limping his way to the locker room, and he did not return. He's supposed to get imaging done today, so we'll keep you updated when we get some more news on it. Feels like it's taking a little while. Maybe this is just the anxiety of me, of a Celtics fan, wanting to know the results, but at the time of recording this, it is 2:30 Eastern. We still don't have anything just yet, but we will definitely be sure to keep you updated as we get them in real time. But what we do know is it was labeled as calf tightness last night, which ultimately doesn't really tell us much organizations typically try and downplay the injury as much as possible on the earlier side just to sort of save face. Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN did report that they believe he avoided an Achilles injury, which is, of course, great news, a big-time positive. Achilles is the worst-case scenario, so assuming that they avoided that is definitely good news, but it doesn't mean that this still couldn't be serious. A calf strain is definitely still possible, and that is the injury we see Giannis currently dealing with for the Milwaukee Bucks. It's kept him out since early April. It's been just under 3 weeks officially since he has been out for the Bucks, and it doesn't seem like he's going to be able to return really for Milwaukee unless something a little miraculous happens here and they are able to turn their series around and seem like they have more of a chance that is worth risking Giannis going back out there and potentially making things worse. So it has, like I mentioned, it's been 3 weeks for Giannis here. For the Celtics, the conference finals would be starting in just about 3 weeks, and the finals in just about 5 weeks in terms of a timetable moving forward here. Again, we don't know what exactly it is just yet, but if it is a calf strain, that is sort of the timetable that we're looking at, and assuming that this does not take a turn for the worse, and the reporting about his Achilles being okay, as long as that's accurate, he should possibly be back in the next month or so. So we will see how that all plays out. In my eyes, the Celtics are capable of finishing off the Heat in this series, and it's not like he's even necessarily been tremendous in this series from the start. I thought that he was really impactful in Game 1. Thought he had a nice Game 3, but Game 2, he was really bad. That was the 1 of 9 shooting performance. I thought early in this game, there was a frustration from me about him just not actually attacking inside and settling for these sort of difficult jump shots, which I just talked about Tatum. It is a little bit of the identity of the Celtics team at times. But that being said, feel like they should be able to close off the Heat. And then I think they should be able to beat the winner of the Cavs Magic series in the second round as well. The Eastern Conference Finals is where things would get a little more contested. We will have to see. That will likely be against the New York Knicks, who are one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the league, of course, and can be very physical. So Porzingis' size could definitely be much needed in a series like that. But we will see. The Celtics have played 25 games without Porzingis up to this point this year, and they are 21-4. So this is an organization that is able to have success without one of their stars being available. But in order to continue out that success, their other stars have to step up. And it hasn't really felt like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have been at that level that we know they can play at. It's a great luxury for them that they are as deep as they are and very well-rounded. But if you look sort of in the Western Conference, we just talked about the Lakers. If LeBron and or Anthony Davis doesn't show up to a game, they have pretty much no chance of winning, especially when you're playing a playoff team such as the Denver Nuggets. And the Celtics were able to have success during the regular season without Porzingis, but it is, of course, a different animal when the playoffs come around. I think that Tatum and Brown just flat out have to be better. And we have seen the way that the Heat have given the Celtics problems defensively in the past 2 postseasons, and specifically those matchups of Tatum and Brown. So, it feels like this is possibly the most difficult it will get from a schematic standpoint, but at the same time, I do feel like the Magic are a very good defense, obviously top 3 in terms of defensive rating. They've been tremendous in this series against Cleveland up to this point, and I feel like that's going to be no walk in the park for them either. The Magic also sort of, especially if you look at last year, were able to give the Celtics a lot of problems from a regular season standpoint. The Magic, again, we'll see if they even come out of the their first round series against the Cavs. It's currently knotted up at 2-2, but I do think that the Celtics should be able to make the Eastern Conference Finals. But again, gets a little hairier from there. But other thoughts on this game, I really didn't feel like the Celtics applied the same level of pressure on Miami's offense that they did in Game 3. They gave their ball handlers a little bit more space. Seemed like they were maybe trying to clamp down on Hero, the playmaker, a little bit more. Clearly, they weren't shaken by the shooting percentages in Game 2, where the Heat were still getting a lot of open shots, but they weren't hitting. They were just 9 of 33. Like I said, at Game 2, they feel was at least something sort of law of averages. They can't do that on a regular basis, and last night at least that proved to be right. And I also feel like we're seeing a level of maturity from the Celtics team in terms of being able to sort of understand opposing teams' defenses and try and work, I wouldn't say mismatches, because the Celtics in this series also have been looking for individual player mismatches, probably a little bit too much, but the zone gave them absolute nightmares last year in the Eastern Conference Finals, and it feels like this season they've been able to handle that much better, in large part due to not just Porzingis, although he was definitely important for that, but because of Jrue Holiday and Derrick White, who, like I mentioned, they were both good in this game. I thought that last year in the playoffs, we did see Marcus Smart be able to take advantage of certain instances by getting inside, and here were Holiday and White consistently getting to the paint. The back-to-back dunks from Derrick White were unbelievable. In that third quarter, I believe it was. That was crazy, but Holiday was looking to get himself into the paint early, and he was having success there. Derrick White as well. But, Tatum and Brown just draw so much attention themselves that they have these other very capable guards now, that not that Marcus Smart wasn't capable, but he was just sort of, he did his own thing for a lot of it, and I loved Marcus Smart as a Celtics fan, but at the same time with him, he sort of wanted to play his game as opposed to being a little bit more of a supplemental piece, it felt like, in Tatum and Brown's game. That was at least sort of the vibe that I got personally, but Holiday had himself a nice little bounce-back game, at least offensively, from games 3 to 4. Now, I thought that he was tremendous on defense in game 3, so it's not like he was bad, but just from a scoring perspective, he only had 3 in that game, and this time he bounces back with 11. But another note here I had is the fact that the Celtics had a 20-point lead in the fourth quarter, and, it was going to take a Dean Wade type comeback there from one of their role players to get red hot and end up pulling off this sort of miraculous comeback. But it did still feel like the Celtics were definitely gettable in that final quarter, where they were just kind of doing some stupid tendencies that we've seen from them in the past. They were doing stupid lazy fouls. They were turning the ball over. Jaylen Brown missed the hoop at the rim a couple times, and their offense just looked so much more disjointed than it does, through the regular course of the game, where they're trying to slow it down, they're trying to hunt these individual mismatches as opposed to just playing their game and actually moving the ball around. So we know the Celtics have been a very good regular season team and everything, and for me, it's just really hard to put some of these late game situations out of my head where we've seen it in the past that they aren't able to convert in big moments, and I think that they're fully capable of it, but they do sort of have to, on the biggest stage, prove that they are sort of past those bad tendencies that they have. And then final note here I have is, I thought that the Van Gundy take on that Tatum Adebayo play in the fourth quarter was really weird, where if you didn't see it in the fourth quarter, the whistle was blown after Patty Mills picked up a defensive foul trying to run through a screen. Jason Tatum, put up a practice shot, as most players in the NBA do in those instances, and Bam closed out on him, shoved him a little bit in that midsection, and ended up getting his feet in Tatum's landing area, and Tatum rolled his ankle a little bit, and the refs then reviewed the play, eventually called it a flagrant, but Van Gundy spent 5 minutes just entirely blaming Tatum and saying, oh, well, what was Bam supposed to do? Let Tatum get a free shot? And I don't know, what's he supposed to do? You can put a hand up, but do you need to sort of put your hands physically on him and get up in his space like that to, you know, potentially injure him? It was reckless by definition in my eyes, and the way that Van Gundy was sort of justifying it made it seem like, oh, well, because it's after the whistle, you know, anything goes. But that just doesn't make sense to me. And it was, I wouldn't say hostile necessarily. I don't think that Bam had the intent of injuring Tatum. But again, to this idea of, oh, well, it's after the whistle, so, you know, why would that be anything? I don't know. If you throw a punch after the whistle, and I understand there's a massive difference between that and necessarily what Bam did, but it's still a reckless play after the whistle. And now Van Gundy, he was just very intent on the fact that, you know, that was fully on Tatum, and it was just a little bit ridiculous to me, but whatever. At the end of the day, Tatum was fine. It's not a big deal. It was just something that I thought was funny and also really annoying at the same time, because even sort of taking away my personal investment into that situation as a Celtics fan, I feel like to any degree, you know, if the roles were reversed and it was Tatum getting under Bam's landing spare area like that, I feel like it was just an unnecessary play, and the way that Van Gundy was, you know, really going after Tatum in that situation was just strange to me. But anyways, the Celtics take a 3-1 series lead. Even without Porzingis, they should be able to wrap this one up in the next couple games, but we will likely find out about the Porzingis situation later today. Still waiting on anything, really. So if we get any news during the show, we will tell you then. If not, we will be probably putting out a YouTube short later this afternoon with the update as well, so stay tuned for that. But on that note, we are going to be taking our second break of the show, and when we come back, we're going to be diving into the Oklahoma City Thunder's sweep of the New Orleans Pelicans. So stick with us, and we will be right back.